Jon here from All Miniatures Great and Small with Jacob, and we are reviewing Fighting First. It's a new source book for Flames of War Mid-War version 4. So when version 4 released earlier this year, that was this year, wasn't it?
Yep.
We reviewed Africa Corps and the Desert Rats books, and I'll put a link to those reviews down below in the video description. But now we're getting Fighting First, so we're adding the Americans to the desert battle. So Battlefront was very nice to send us an early review copy on PDF. So we've been looking it over. We played a battle report, which I'm not sure if this is going up first or at the same time, but there'll be a battle report linked with this review. So Fighting First brings in the Americans to the Africa campaign. So the British and Germans have been going at it for close to 2 years.
Yes.
And so the first part of the book, and I've got the table of contents in front of me, the first 15 pages or so, that's fluff, that's background, historical information about the American arrival. And then the rest of the book gives us all the fun stuff that we've been looking forward to.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what is in the book. Did you want to bring up the flags?
No.
Okay.
As I was waiting for him to set up the camera, I noticed there's not enough stars on the front cover. Don't worry about it.
All right, so let's talk about the lists in this book, because there's a lot of lists.
There are.
I forget how many were in the Desert Rats book, but I have a feeling we have more here for Americans.
At least for Germans, I know there's three. It's Panzer
Three
IIIs, Panzer IVs, and the infantry. So this is, I don't know if they're listening to some complaints they had about the earlier books, but there's a greater variety in this book, and that's much appreciated.
And I guess first off, I'm going to say I love this book. I'm gonna lay it out there. So I'm an American player, so I'm a little biased, primarily an American player. But I know you have an American army too, not a mid-war.
I could, it's Italy, so I could, if I wanted to be lazy, I could call it mid-war. But
right.
And so yes, Jon has more Shermans and Stuarts than 3 of the other American players that I know combined. So he does love his Americans. However, it's a good book, and I think it's actually well put together. It seems balanced, and it brings some flavor that wasn't present in the desert before this. So
yeah, and I think it's a step in the right direction. Not to harp on the older books, but I think Desert Rats in particular left a lot to be desired.
yes.
I think a lot of units were missing, and a lot of people were disappointed with what it had. Africa Corps too, not as much, I don't think, but still, you only had 3 lists in Africa Corps.
Yeah, from a German player standpoint, it's a little worse, but yeah.
You're still missing some units.
I am missing some units, and even just organizations that it would have been nice to have.
Yeah.
Anyways.
All right, so let's talk about what the Americans are bringing to the table. So first up, we have in the 1st Armored Division, we have 3 different tank companies you can take. And they're all basically similar, but it's the 3 main battle tanks that the Americans bring to the war. So you have the M4 Sherman Company, you have the M3 Lee, I don't know how much longer we can call that the Lee tank in the current environment, and then you have the M3 Stuart. So you have those 3 companies. So let me scroll down there. But I guess before we do that, let's talk about the U.S. Special Rules.
Yeah.
So before we get into the companies themselves, the special rules for the Americans, what they can bring in. Now a lot of these, if you're an American player, you're probably familiar with them if you've played version 3. But just to go over them, it gives the secondary weapon rule, which is just that's kind of a universal rule that applies because the Lee tank is there with the different main guns. So the British already had that special rule. Basically, it is you can fire your secondary weapon. So like on a Lee, you have the hull gun, which is your main gun, then you have a turret mounted 37 millimeter. So you can fire both of those in the same turn, but the turret, the secondary gun, is at a rate of fire 1 and -1 or 1 additional to hit, so it's harder to hit. Which is cool.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It seems, it's a necessary rule.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think of it as a fun bonus to Americans so much as a way, the mechanics to get around, the battle tanks of them. So, and the stabilizers, once again, that's another one that's a holdover from last edition. You move, instead of actually getting a reduction in your rate of fire, you just get a +1 to hit. So, is it the same May?
No, it's required.
It's required, yeah. So
That is different.
That is different.
Yeah.
So back in the day, you kind of had to hem and haw and say, do I want to go big and roll 2 dice needing 6s, or do I want to just be happy with 1 dice on 5+? Here, you use stabilizers when you move. So.
And back in the version 3, you would almost always use stabilizers anyway. I think the odds are
Better.
a little bit better.
It's better.
Yeah. All right, tank destroyer. So this is the seek, strike, and destroy rule. So tank destroyers had one of the biggest revisions, and there is a tank destroyer company in this book, which we'll get to. But the tank destroyer rule, seek, strike, and destroy, the unit with seek, strike, and destroy may attempt to shoot and scoot movement order after succeeding in a blitz movement order. So I don't really like this mechanic just because it's really hard to pull off. You have to have a successful blitz order. So that's like a 4+
With train.
train, and then you get the chance to do another 4+ to do it. So really, 50-50 chance of making it harder to hit your target and not, and then a 50-50 chance if you succeed of being able to pull back.
And even if you were stationary, you didn't want to have to do a blitz, but now suddenly, or not a blitz, a blitz. So I didn't have to do a blitz, you still have to successfully do that to then shoot and scoot later. So
Well, you could always
you
do
just
shoot and
straight
shoot on your own. It's like if you're 4 inches away from a hedge, you want to move up to that hedge
Yeah.
with the blitz, shoot, and then fall back. You need to pass 2 tests to do that.
Yeah.
And at a 4+, that's hard to do.
It's hard.
So it's nowhere near as good. Now, the M10, tank destroyer is a pretty sweet tank, but
Good. Yeah.
the tank destroyer rule, I think, is got a needed nerf. I don't know if it's too much. My gut tells me it might be a little bit too much, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. All right. Next up, what do we got?
Determined. It's one of those where, for infantry, basically, it's kind of built into the unit stats now. So sometimes, it's just the determined troops have a better rally rating. So, but in each individual unit, if they are determined, then it'll have that built into it. So it's one of those. It's like in version 3 they had British Bulldog, and now that has just made its way into the actual unit stats, saying, oh, this unit counterattacks on a 3+, even though they're confident on a 4+. So this is kind of the same for Americans. They just have a better rally rating.
Yeah, it's nice that in version 4 you can have more nuanced stats that way.
Yeah.
And on the card, especially when you're playing mid-war where you have your unit cards, it's all there. They take this into account. So
Yeah.
you don't, like if you're playing version 4 late war and you have rules like this, you just have to remember all that.
And it's difficult, and it's funny because we even are still using the vernacular of 3rd edition saying, oh, this is confident trained, but in reality, it's confident trained with determined, and actually it has green, so it's skills 5+ technically, but it's hit on a 3+. So eventually I'm guessing confident and trained are going to be leaving our vocabulary.
Especially with mid-war.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's not the same thing. All right. The MG transport rule, that's the, like for armored rifles, the light machine gun teams can shoot their machine guns out of their half-tracks, which is
Nice.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
Observer, the unit leader of a unit with observer can spot for any friendly artillery. And last but not least, my favorite,
I'm on target.
time on target.
Yeah.
So if you range in on the first attempt, any infantry or gun team hit by a bombardment must reroll successful save. So that's interesting. We might have done that wrong for tanks. It doesn't mention tanks rerolling their save.
That's true.
That's interesting.
Also, was the M1 Garand, is that a special rule, or is that in the unit profile?
That's in the unit
Okay.
profile, I believe. We'll find it.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on now to the actual formations. The first one is the M4 Sherman Company.
These guys are expensive, but you get what you pay for.
Yeah, so if you're not familiar with the Sherman, it is front armor 6, side armor 4, top armor 1, and it has a 75mm gun in the turret, which is AT-10, 32-inch range, 3+ firepower. So it's awesome. It also has
28 inches.
or 28
Yeah.
inches, and ton of machine guns, a lot of machine guns. I don't want to look at the HQ. The platoon itself, its rated motivation is 4+, its skill is a 5+, and it's hit on a 3+. So it's kind of a combination of trained and conscript. Yeah. So the skill 5+ means these guys are not going to be doing movement orders.
No.
Very, very often.
Ranging in very well.
No.
Yeah, so it's, but I still, front armor 6 in the desert is pretty good when you considering most German tanks, short barreled Panzer III is AT8. So long range, you're rolling a 1 to bail, which is nice. And then a long barrel is not front armor 9 or AT9 against front armor 6. So, just, basically short of a 88, a Martyr, or a Tiger, there's not much that can reliably take out Shermans.
Yeah. So Shermans are really nice, but you pay for them. It's about 8 points a tank, and you can take 5 tanks in a platoon. The formation, the company lets you take 3 platoons of Sherman tanks, I believe. Let me go up to that force order chart.
So that would be at 100 points, you could get maybe 3 platoons of 3, an HQ, and like a mortars platoon. That's pretty much it.
But the interesting thing with the M4 Sherman, and I'll pop up the graphic here so you guys can see it, is, and all of these companies are kind of the same. You have the HQ requirement, which is 1 Sherman, and then you've got 2 required platoons. The first one has to be Shermans, and the next one can be either more Shermans, M3 Lees, or Stuarts. So you have that option for your second compulsory platoon to be any one of the main 3 battle tanks.
Yeah.
And the other companies are the same way. The Lee Company and the Stuart Company, you have the compulsory HQ and first platoon of that tank, and then the second compulsory platoon can be something else.
Yeah.
Otherwise, their support is identical. So it depends on what you want to emphasize. What do you want your HQ to be? Do you want your HQ to be a Sherman, a Lee, or a Stuart? And then you can mix and match accordingly. But as far as compulsory units in a Sherman, and this is true for the Lee and the Stuart, so we can cover them all at once, is in addition to the 3 tank platoons you can take, 2 are compulsory, you can also take mortars, the T-30 75mm assault gun platoon, and armored recon. Personally, I think all 3 of those units are pretty sweet.
Yeah, I agree.
And we'll talk about those a little bit later. So that's the Sherman Company. It's very good, but I can't see a lot of people just going pure Shermans in the desert. It's just not enough tanks.
No.
If you take 2 full platoons of Shermans, that's...
An HQ and a platoon of 3 is like the rock of your army.
Yeah.
So.
And you compare that to a Tiger at 29 points.
29 points, yeah.
3 Shermans is 24 points. And it's not a valid comparison. All right, so let's move on to the
Lee.
The Lee. So in the Lee Company. Now, personally, the Lee is my favorite mid-war tank. I love the Lee. I think it's cool. It's iconic. You don't have the Lee in late war. And it's just so ugly that it's endearing.
I agree. Well, it's Soviet late war. You want to?
Yes.
Or Lend-Lease, but that's
yes, yeah. And I have a Soviet late war. If I play Soviets, I use all American tanks. That's the American player.
My goodness, he's so many American tanks.
My Soviet list is 20 Lees and 10 Stuarts.
Gosh.
So, but anyway, the Lee is awesome. So it's different from the Sherman. And for those maybe don't know history-wise, the M3 Lee was the first tank. They couldn't quite figure out how to get the 75 gun in the turret yet. And then the Sherman was the next thing. So the M3 Lee was always a stopgap design. They put the 75mm gun in the hull. But it's got a lot of weapons. So the Lee itself has in the hull a 75mm gun, which can be upgraded for 1 point to a long-barreled 75mm. So it's the difference between going from a anti-tank rating of 9 to 10. I think the firepower stays the same.
Stays the same.
But the Lee's main gun also picks up an extra 4 inches of range, 28 instead of 24.
Well spent 1 point.
Yeah, so it's a good 1 point, but you're paying a lot. So a base Lee is 5 points, and then you pay 1 point extra per Lee to upgrade to that long barrel, which I think is
it's worth it.
Is worth it.
Yeah.
The Lee itself has a front armor of 5, so it's 1 less than the Sherman. Side armor 4, which is identical to the Sherman. Top armor 1.
Same ratings, confident, 4+, skills, it's green, so a 5+ for the skill checks, and it's hit on 3+. So
yeah, so that's aggressive they call it. And then it's got 4 machine gun shots when it's putting out 4 self-defense. No 50 cal. but it does have AA. So I like the Lee. Jacob is actually hosting a mid-war event next year, early next year, January, Shifting Sands. Check it out. We'll leave a link down below if you're in Arizona or anywhere out here in the Southwest.
Or want to come to Arizona.
Or want to come to Arizona. It's an awesome event. It's been going on for almost 8-9 years now. But anyway, it's going to be mid-war. I'm going to be taking Americans. I'm going to be taking Lees, probably. A lot of Lees. So we'll see. But the Lee tank, that's the Lee platoon. The company is pretty much the same as the Sherman. Again, you can take a Lee as your HQ. The first platoon is compulsory Lees. The second platoon can be Lees, Shermans, or Stuarts. Same support in the mortars, the assault platoon, and the recon.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about the Stuart. Okay. So the Stuart, first the company organization, it is a little bit different. I misspoke earlier. So you have to take the Stuart HQ. And the first 2 Stuart platoons are compulsory. You can't take something else. But that third optional tank platoon can be Stuarts, Lees, or Shermans. So you're compulsory. You have to take 2 Stuart platoons compulsory. Otherwise, the other combat platoons are the same, the mortars and whatnot.
But you're not breaking the bank by having to take 2 compulsory Stuart companies because there's, what is this? It's 2 points a tank.
2 points a tank. So
Yeah.
this is probably the biggest surprise when I first looked at Fighting First. That's a hard sentence. First looked at Fighting First because their stats. What are their stats? Jacob?
It's they're confident, so 4+ rally, remount, all that stuff. They're green, skills 5+, and then they're hit on a 2+. So front armor 3, side armor 2, top armor 1. But hitting on a 2+ is
That's conscript.
That's
in
conscript.
version 3.
And especially on a tank that's front armor 3, like German anti-tank rifles, it's gonna have a field day, 2 shots. That's gonna be 2 hits. AT-7 against front armor 3. You're gonna lose some Stuarts.
Yeah. So, and I think that there's nothing in the British list that's conscript. That's hit on a 2.
No, the British knew what they were doing.
So there's nothing here. Now, in the history section, it talks about this, and the rationale behind it is the light tank guys, these Stuart guys, didn't get to go through the desert training before they were shipped off to Tunisia.
So American.
So they missed that training. So they got out there and they were clueless as to what was going on.
Surprised which continent they were on.
Right. So they're hit on 2s, and you're right. They're 2 points a tank. So that's 5 Stuarts for 10 points.
Yeah.
And if you buy all your compulsories in HQ, 2 platoons of 5, that's 22 points.
Yeah, it's not bad.
So.
Even though they're hit on that though, and so of the American units, I love Stuarts. I loved them since version 2. I have as many Stuarts as John does, which is a lot considering how many Stuarts John has. So, but I do love them, even though they're on 2+. They're a great unit to keep in the backfield. That's what John did to me in the game we just played. You can zip around. You can really threaten most things. They're AT-7, so on the move, most German tanks, if you get them on the side, even on the front, they can threaten things. And the machine guns, 5 machine guns. So they're just amazing little pillboxes to just mess up any infantry unit that's trying to move up and take an objective. So they have their uses, but that conscript it hits hard.
Yeah, and we were joking, but we might be serious. Let me know what you think in the comments about as many Lees as you can get in Stuarts you can get in a 100-point list. So theoretically, that's 50.
Yes.
If you take 3 formations, I guess.
I'm going to tailor the German list so bad. But yes.
Could you build a list to destroy 50 Stuarts coming at you? And probably, but you definitely have to build it. I don't know, but we might pool our Stuarts. I might have to buy some more Stuarts. We might have just Stuarts. He has German Stuarts. We might just have to have
every Stuart we own.
50 Stuarts on the table. Let us know if you guys like to see that. But anyway, and that sounds like fun, but that's a concern too. Like in a competitive environment, are we going to see, like, are people going to try to bring 50 Stuarts?
Yeah.
Which is historically crazy.
Yeah.
But you can build that the way that the game currently is, and is that healthy for the game?
Yeah, and then you wonder about tournament organizers need to say, oh, you're limited to 2 formations. Well, then that hampers other nations maybe who, for example, Germans. They kind of sometimes have to like piece together several formations to make a well-rounded force. I don't know. So maybe we do need to test that out to see if it is.
Yeah. But I think it'd be fun, and that's the difference between tournament, super competitive gaming and friendly gaming. it would be awesome to throw it down here, and
Yeah.
you know what I'm going to bring, and I'm going to do. We build a fun list rather than just ambush some poor person at a tournament.
With
Oh
50
yeah, I have
stewards."
50 stewards.
Have fun.
So, but how many machine gun shots with each one? That's 5. So that's
250 machine gun shots.
So, but the Stuart I love. I think it's an awesome looking tank. I am going to buy some new Stuarts.
Yeah, you're gonna have more than me then. Right.
We'll do that. So we'll see how it goes. So that's a Stuart company. So again, it is slightly different from the other 2 companies in that the 2 tank platoons are compulsory. They remain Stuarts.
Mhm.
All right. Next up, I think we go into the armored rifles, right? Armored rifles are awesome. They're awesome in mid-war. They're awesome anywhere. Let me go to the org chart for that one. Okay, so the armored rifle company, you have the HQ, which can be 2 rifle teams either in jeeps or half-tracks, and then you have 2 compulsory armored rifle platoons. Now, armored rifle platoons, if you don't know, they're huge.
Yes, they are.
You can take a 3rd armored rifle platoon as an option, and then in support, I guess they're weapons platoons. You have armored machine gun platoon, armored anti-tank platoon, assault gun platoon, and mortar platoon. So lots of half-tracks.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the armored rifle platoon itself. I think you have a late war armored rifle. platoon company,
Yeah, Italian and late. I mean, really, they didn't really, other than the winter, it's kind of equipped the same.
Yeah.
It looks the same, but yeah, they're good. I mean, was it 14 stands for the maximum? Right, for 15 points, you get 6 M1 Garens, 5 bazookas, 2 LMGs, 1 mortar, and that's what is that? 14, right? 11,
Yeah,
12,
yeah.
13, 14. 14 stands. So to test, you need to cut them down to less than 3 within 6 inches of the HQ, which is hard.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, so if the American player is playing smart, keeping his units together, you need to kill 12 before he's testing. Now, if you have artillery, you can force them to spread out and then maybe work something there, but
Yeah.
that's hard to do. So for those 14 teams, and keep in mind it's 14 infantry teams plus the half-tracks.
Yeah.
You get for 15 points. So it's not,
a good
it's not
buy.
bad. So their stats, though, what are their stats here? They have motivations of confident, which is 4+, but they rally on a 3+. That's where that
That's the determined thing, yeah.
They're green, so they're 5+ on their skill, so that's not good. They're hit on a 3, and
Got the 3+ save for being an infantry.
they have 3+ save. Yeah.
Movement's the same as most infantry, tactical 8. The Garand, like you were talking about, 16-inch range, halted and moving, it's the same. So,
Yeah.
you know.
That's nice. And the LMGs are very nice to have in there as well. All right, the armored rifle platoon brings all of the tools in the toolbox. You've got infantry to deal with other infantry. You've got 5 bazooka stands to deal with tanks, because each one of those bazookas is AT-10.
Yeah.
You've got 2 light machine gun teams, which is pours, that's 10 dice
Yeah.
and fire there. And you have a mortar, so theoretically you can pin someone with an artillery weapon.
Yeah.
It's an awesome unit. So 15 points, so it's pricey, but you get what you want.
Still, I mean, I feel like any other formation you take, taking a single armored rifle platoon, you feel confident that that's enough bodies to take an objective, and it's enough bodies that if you sit it on your objective, that people are going to have a hard time moving them.
Yeah.
So,
Especially in the mid-war meta where German rifle companies, we were talking earlier, max out at 7 stands.
yeah.
The British are not, or even less, I think.
I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah.
But they, so these American platoons are almost twice the size, or are twice the size.
Yeah.
Armored rifle platoons. Then they can come into M3 half-track. Now this is different now. This is, instead of M5 half-tracks, which we have for late war, the M3 half-track, which is why, thanks Battlefront, I'm going to have to buy all new models for the half-track's pretty nice. I mean, it's front armor 1, but it has machine guns on it. I mean, it's got a 50 cal, it's got a 30 cal. Once you take care of the armor, you can have infantry stay in the half-tracks and machine gun,
To your heart's content.
artillery,
Yeah.
enemy infantry, all that stuff. The 50 cal is good at digging things out of, out of cover. right, so that's the armored rifle platoon. They also have, just to round out what they have, you can take that armored machine gun platoon, which is basically either 2 or 4. I guess it's always 4 heavy machine gun teams.
Yeah.
Whether they come with a
half-track
or not. But basically, so anytime it's armored, it means it's in a very weakly armored half-track. Which is nice to add, but it only costs 4 points.
Yeah, it's nice if you want to beef up your formation, but I don't know. I feel like the armored rifle platoon has when you have so many machine guns and every vehicle and every man has 2 LMGs backing him up. I don't know the need for a machine gun platoon, but then again, if you really want to pad your formation just so you don't break, it's worth it.
Yeah. And the nice thing with the heavy machine guns is they've increased the range. They go out to 24 in Section 4.
I guess that's true. The LMG is only 16-inch range.
Yeah.
So.
But you're right. I mean, the armored rifle platoon itself is so awesome. Unless you were tailoring your list like you knew you were going to go against infantry hordes, where you want to max out. But even then, it's not ideal. It's a good company, but it's not. All right, the next weapon platoon is the T-30 75mm assault gun platoon. So this is the half-track with basically a anti-tank gun attached to it. It's a 75mm anti-tank gun. So I like this unit. It's cheap. It's like 1 point per vehicle.
Yeah.
You can get up to 3, so it's either 2 or 3, so 2 or 3 points. They have stats on the gun is either artillery or direct fire, which is one of the reasons why I like it. In direct fire, it's only anti-tank 6, but it's 3+ firepower. And then as an artillery bombardment, it's anti-tank 2 with a 4+ firepower, and it can do smoke, and it's got a 50 cal on it as well. So really, the assault gun platoon's not meant to go fight tanks. It's not gonna. Maybe Panzer IIs it would do okay against.
I see it as hunting, recon units, armored recon. That's a perfect. It's a cheap platoon you can hunt for, or even if it's a fun surprise you have hanging in the back, supporting with smoke, and then suddenly some Panzer IIs break through, or some recon gets close, or something. Here's a unit you can throw at them that actually has more bite to it than you'd expect.
And here's the way I see using these is, they sit back, providing smoke and artillery, pinning down infantry, and then towards endgame, they have a 3+ firepower. They can move up and direct fire those guns, artillery, anti-tank guns, infantry, off the objectives for you to get them. But they're front armor 1, so if anyone shoots at them or looks at them, they're going away.
Yeah.
They're cheap, and then, again, it's padding. It's artillery that can hang back, and it keeps your armored rifles in the game longer.
Yeah.
For 3 points.
I would take assault gun platoon over a machine gun platoon any day.
Yes,
but
yeah. It's cheaper, and I think artillery is pretty useful.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is the armored mortars, which I think all the platoons can take.
Yeah.
81 millimeter mortar just in the back of a half-track, and that's a great weapon. There's nothing wrong with it. All right, so that is the armored rifle. So now we are going into the
infantry company.
Infantry company. All right, the big red one. So the rifle company. It's interesting formation. I don't know if you've looked at that one very closely, but all right. So you've got a compulsory rifle HQ and 2 rifle platoons. Nothing new there. You can take a 3rd rifle platoon as an option, and then for weapons platoons, you've got a lot of choices. You've got a machine gun platoon. Actually, you can take 2 machine gun platoons, 2 anti-tank platoons, 2 mortar platoons, and some of those T-30 75mm assault gun platoons.
This is just even formation-wise, we haven't gone over a lot. A lot of these units, it's just a dismounted version of the armored rifle platoon one, but their cost and the amount that you can bring. One of the difficulties I think with a lot of British lists and German lists is that getting to that break point of breaking a formation, it's doable. You can say, oh, I need to knock out this tank and platoon and this tank platoon, and then I can break this formation. With this armored rifle company, or just the rifle company, there's no end in sight. I don't feel like breaking that formation is an option in a game against them.
And it's cheap too. So the rifle platoon, let's talk about that. It's 10 rifle teams and 1 bazooka team. So it's not the same organization as an armored rifle. It's more infantry. That's the full-size one. You get that for 8 points. And then you can add a LMG for, I think, an extra
Another point, yeah.
So 9 points nets you 12 teams. So it is cheaper Then the armored rifle platoon at 14 stands for 15 points. You get 12 stands for 9 points.
Yeah.
Stats-wise, they are pretty similar. They are confident 4, rally on a 3. They're green, so their skill is a 5+, and they are aggressive, so they're hit on a 3.
I feel like when I think of like list building, getting a flood of these guys, you know, even at the short platoon, 6 points, it's 7 rifle teams, 1 bazooka. That's 8 stands, you know, hit on a 3+, but still they're nasty enough. You get 3 of those, you go to town on the support, which is cheap, and you're not even at 50 points, and you can fill in, you know, extra support from, you know, tank destroyers, Shermans, whatever, and you've got this huge base that you can't break, and then all these support platoons that are going to be able to rain down fire. So, yeah.
Well, it's very doable too. You take a rifle company tricked out with a lot of stuff. You can take a Stuart Company tricked out with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Still be under 100 points. Very nice. All right, so that's the rifle platoon. The mortar platoon, that stuff's all pretty basic.
Yeah.
Let's go on to the tank destroyers. So, I don't think we've seen a tank destroyer company on the British or German side. Tank destroyers are unique to American formation, and basically it's a failed concept. The tank destroyer concept didn't really pan out. The idea was the tank destroyers destroy the tanks destroy the infantry, and so on. And it turns out the tanks just destroy the tanks.
They would not give up the entire war too.
But so this introduces the M10 tank destroyer and the tank destroyer company. So the company itself, the HQ is a Stuart, and it's the only trained Stuart hit on a 3 instead of a hit on a 2. The Stuart commander apparently knows his stuff.
That's terrible. That's worth noting, but yeah.
Well, if you're a Stuart lover, that's your place where you can get a hit on 3 Stuart. And then you have 2 M10 platoons compulsory, and you can take a 3rd. Plus, you can take 2 armored recon patrols.
And as I love that. You know, this was something in the last version they introduced late in the game. The actual tank destroyer companies. I think it was Cobra that first had the tank destroyer company. I can't remember which book. But even in this failed concept of a tank destroyer company, it was always separate from a tank company. So the fact that you can now finally play a tank destroyer company, I really like that. I love the history of it. I love the interest of this terrible concept. But now you can actually play that company. So, yeah.
Well, and I love the M10. It's a good tank. Let's talk about the M10 and what you got. So each M10 is 8 points. So it's the same as a Sherman.
Yeah.
But front armor is 5, side armor 2, top armor 0. So it's much weaklier. I guess it's only 1 less from the front. And for version 3 players, that's 1 more than the M10 had in version 3.
Yeah.
So it's not bad. So it's equal to the Lee as far as front armor. But it rocks an AT-12 gun that fires
36 inches.
36, yeah. Which is AT-12, anti-tank 12, to 3+ firepower. So it is, you know, when we reviewed Africa Corps and Desert Rats, we talked about the Tiger problem, that you really didn't have much in your toolbox to deal with the Tiger.
Yeah.
Tiger goes down and you're kind of screwed, you know. 17-pounder, I think, was the only thing.
17, 25-pounder. Or airplanes.
Or air. Well, no, I don't think even the airplane.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
yeah. The cannon's strong.
They are strong enough, yeah. So I love though. So it's interesting because that's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of an M10 can kill a Tiger. In our game, the second the M10 started shooting at the Panzer IIIs, they just melted away. So there's something to be said for just focusing on everything else. And the old Tiger, you know, adage of just ignore it. It's mean, but it can only kill 2 tanks a turn.
Yep. And
now with tank destroyers in this current version of Forward Mid-War, it's just you can really mess up those Panzer IIIs and 4s. So.
Yeah, I mean, so Panzer IIIs at best at long range you might get a 6 up save. I mean,
if it's up armor 6 goes to 7, yeah. So, but still, it's. But they can
not often.
They can deal with them.
And really the price point. You know, I think between the 2, if I was going to go Shermans or M10s, I would take the M10s every time.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the +2 anti-tank is much better than the 1 less armor.
I mean, you
at the same cost.
Yeah, you treat them differently. You know, a Sherman you can rush ahead, and M10 is there to stop the German players' tanks.
Now, stat-wise, we're confident, but
They're trained too, so that shoot or the take story doctrine of being able to get to blitz and then doing
Yeah.
a shoot and scoop. It's more possible. You're not green like everyone else in the Army, but still.
Yeah, your skill's 4+, but you're still 50% chance of pulling off the first one.
Yeah.
And then, but you're also open top, so your counterattack rating is just a 6.
Yep.
And your open top assault, skill is 6 as well. But the M10, I think, is a great tank. As far as a company of these guys, where you're required to take the HQ, which is 4 points for 2 stewards, and then at least 2 platoons of M10s, that's going to give up a lot of points. But
That is.
you have the same problem with the Sherman Company as well.
Yeah.
What can you take in support? Now, the nice thing is you can take a rifle company or a Stuart Company and
Really flesh that out. Yeah.
add 20 stewards. So what are they going to worry about shooting at the M10s?
Mhm.
So I think the M10 company could potentially, I always go back and forth. When I first saw it, I was like, oh, this sounds terrible. But I think with the right support or right formation, it could be pretty awesome.
I mean, even if you go minimum strength, 2 units of 2 M10s with the Stewart, you can do spread out AT-12 firepower that needs to be dealt with, and you still have enough points with, like you said, with the rifle company to fill out the gap in between those 2 different units. So.
Yeah. And the problem, I think, well, you're going to run into this with Shermans as well, is the downside is German lists are, they have a lot of high AT.
Yeah.
You know, if the martyrs get off an alpha strike, those M10s aren't going to stick around.
No, they're not.
The Tiger, the 88s in the backfield, even the Pac 38s, what are
89.
89.
Yeah.
So that could be pretty scary to front armor 5. So it's all about kind of husbanding your forces and bringing them out at the right time. But I mean that's part of the game. I think Americans are going to outnumber almost anyone, except maybe a Crusader force if you're.
That'll be a fun game that I don't want to do. Crusaders versus Stuarts.
Crusaders versus Stuarts. Another thing to point out that we didn't talk about was the support units. Yeah. So the support units are, in addition to your formation, what you can take as support, which is outside of the formation itself. So they don't count towards your formations being in good spirits and all that stuff. So fighting first adds, you can take armored recon, a couple more platoons of that, some more of you can take P40s. The 37 millimeter AA platoon in half tracks, and priest batteries or 105 millimeter artillery batteries. The other thing you can do is take allied support, which is kind of cool. You may field 1 compulsory unit from a British formation as support and 1 British formation as an allied formation. So think about that. You could have a Crusader formation and a cheap Stuart formation.
True.
Or Honey Stuarts and Stuarts.
Or Grants and Lees.
Grants and Lees. Whoa.
Think of the infighting.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that'd be... All right, so that's pretty good. Let's talk about some of those units. Some of them, like the 105 millimeter artillery, it's pretty basic stuff. But the P40, let's talk about the P40. So I think that's a little bit different than both the Hurricane and the Stuka. Because the Hurricane in Desert Rats just gets a cannon.
Yep.
And the Stuka just gets the bomb. The P40 is multi-roll, so it gets both.
Americans and their toys.
I know. So the P40 you get 2 of them for 6 points. They're hit on a 3, and they get a 5-up aircraft save. They're 50 cals. They get 3 shots.
3-up aircraft save.
Oh, 3-up aircraft save. Sorry. They are hit on a 5 plus. So each plane gets 3 shots, 3 rate of fire for their 50 cal, or they have a 500-pound bomb.
Yep.
Which is nice.
AT-3 2 plus firepower.
AT-3. So best you could do is bail out a Tiger, but you could destroy some tanks with that.
Or yeah.
And you'll see
Go
no
after
spoilers
martyrs.
in our battle, but
Or other light vehicles.
Yeah, they are good at going at soft vehicles. Not as good as the Hurricane with
No.
the cannons, but it's doable. So the P40 just gives you both options. Neither one is as good, but it's still pretty versatile. And at 6 points, I see them being in a lot of lists.
I agree.
It lets you get to that squishy stuff in the backfield. And then it forces the German to think about taking an AA platoon. All right, so Jacob, what do you think about Fighting First? What's your final verdict on Fighting First?
I like it a lot. It's nice. It's wonderful. It's great. I don't want to be jealous. I wish it's what Africa Corps and Desert Rats was, because just there's so much flavor to it. There's so many units in it. I didn't count up the units, but I honestly feel like there's just more options here than there are in the other books, and even there's more ways to play with those options. So it's a great book. I find very few things to find fault with it.
Yeah. Well, I think too the Americans, it's a little bit easier because the Americans are much more homogenous in that their formations they don't change. I mean, there's only 3 main battle tanks in here.
Yeah.
And the Stuart and the Sherman, there's no options for them. They're just the Stuart and the Sherman. The Lee has 2 options. So really you have 4 flavors of tanks you can take. The Africa Corps, you've got
Panzer III up armor, Panzer III long, Panzer III with heat, Panzer IV, Panzer IV short.
So even though you've got less formations, you have more. The Germans have Panzer IIs. They have more tanks. The more options to choose from. But the Americans don't have that problem. They only had 3 types of tanks, and it was easier to build it when they had fewer. So it's easier to present that way. Now I like the book too because we get so many formations. We get the 3 tank formations, the armored rifle formation, the rifle formation, and the tank destroyer. So that's 6 formations out of Europe. So double what you get in Africa Corps. So I really like that. But you're right. I kind of wish that the British book and the German book had that stuff.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of grumbling in the community about those books. There was a lot of disappointment that not all the units were there, and not all the options. And I think Battlefront has listened because this book seems to be a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
So it's kind of exciting to see. So I know that Italians are next.
Yes, sir.
But who knows when?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Certainly not for shifting sands. So we're having to make some specialty lists, but still, it'll be nice.
Yeah, if you come to Jacob Shifting Sands, he's going to have some Italian temporary lists to play with, which will be awesome. But then hopefully I'd like to see them revisit the British and Germans.
So I know, at least from interviews I've read, I know that they plan to do a later mid-war DAC and British list that includes more options. I don't know if this is their way of saying, trying to make it look like that was their plan all along, and they're actually going to flesh out these options. I don't know, but I'm excited for them.
Yeah. So I really like it too. I played a lot of mid-war, and I've played an awful lot of late war and early war.
Yeah.
And the mid-war is growing on me now with the cards. I like the integrated cards.
Mm-hmm.
Now with the Americans out there, I have less of an excuse to not want to play mid-war. I just noticed even my British list is all Grants and Stuarts.
Yes, it
Stuarts.
is.
Yeah, so there you go, guys. That's Fighting First. We both like the book. As an American player, it's a no-brainer. Pick up the book. Even if you're not an American player, it's cool to see the direction you're going. And the nice thing is these books don't cost that much.
No, that is nice. It's not these giant, double paired D-Days, $80 for a pair of books.
Yeah.
So it is if you want to just dabble a little bit. If you want an American unit in your formation as an allied, it's worth picking up. So.
Yeah, because I guess the British could add an American formation.
Why you'd want conscript Stuarts, I don't know, but they'll find a reason.
I don't know. 2 points each. Pretty good. All right, so there you go, guys. That's our review of Fighting First. Hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please go ahead. Give us a like, subscribe. Let us know what you think about Fighting First. Let us know what you think about the other books, the direction of Flames of War. We'd love to hear from you. We love talking to you guys. Thanks for watching, and keep on wargaming.